Okay, we are live. Sorry about the wait, but good evening, and thank you for joining us for the Creek Fire presentation and community conversation for Thursday, October 15th. Tonight we are joined by representatives from Team 14 on the Creek Fire. We also have Town, County, and Forest Service personnel. We have several public information officers who have been supporting the fire, and also Town County staff that I would like to thank for taking time out of there this evening for joining us and providing update to the community. We'll begin the presentation tonight with an operational briefing. Let me just scroll down to the agenda here for you. So we'll do kind of welcome introductions. We'll do the operational briefing that will include fire behavior, weather and air quality forecasts. That will also include the strategy and plan tactics to protect the community of Mammoth Lakes. We'll finish the presentation part of the evening with some of the common questions that we've been hearing and seeing on Facebook, on Sierra National Forest sites, and throughout town, and what we've been receiving through email as well. We'll then take questions from the chat room. We'll also take questions from Facebook Live if you're watching along. Then, if time allows, we will respond to any call-in questions. So we'll get to as many questions as we can. As usual, we're also streaming live on the town's Facebook page, and this is a bilingual conversation. Just quickly, just want to make sure that the community knows where to go to get the authoritative sources of information on the Creek Fire. This is the Mona County Creek Fire portal. This is a URL right there on the bottom. So throw the question in the Google, and you can find our Creek Fire portal, real-time information. Also, CAL FIRE, Creek Fire incident page right there on the bottom. You can see the link. Sierra National Forest Facebook site. I'm sure everybody has been using this frequently and has this bookmarked. And again, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday evening at 7 o'clock, there's a live Facebook operational briefing. They'll also take questions from the public. And then again, if any of your questions are not answered this evening, please email us at creekfire@townofmammoth.ca.gov. With that, I will stop sharing my screen, and then I'll hand it over to Brendan, and then Brendan will introduce Creek Fire Team 14, and we'll commence tonight's operational briefing. Brendan.
Good evening. My name is Brendan Hawley. I'm serving as a public information officer for California Team 14, and I want to thank your community for allowing us the time to come in and give a specific briefing for you folks as opposed to the whole fire. On our side this evening, the way it'll look is, as Stuart explained, we'll go over to Jeff Henson for an operational briefing. We do have a fire weather person who will speak to that, fire behavior. And then we're going to go over to Amber Ortega, who's on the screen for a smoke outlook, and she's our air resource advisor. And then we'll come back to Steve Watkins, our incident commander, for some closing comments. We will be here for Q&A. I understand that Deborah Schweitzer will be here with some commonly asked questions and some talking points. And so without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Jeffrey Henson for the operational update.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. Okay, good to see everyone. This group that I see on the screen, it's been a few months, but I've been with you all this summer a couple times. So here's an overview of kind of where we're at now. Obviously, up in the top right here, you can see the town of Mammoth Lakes, the Lakes Basin, Mammoth Mountains here where this R is. That's a symbol for repeater, radio repeater, Devil's Postpile. I think most of you are familiar with all this. And then we've got the Creek Fire here. Area of concern currently is in here, Cassidy Meadow, Balloon Dome, and the Rattlesnake Lake area. Before I get to that, I just kind of wanted to mention here down here is a Vermillion Valley Resort down here. We've been attempting for a few days to complete direct line construction across this northern flank of this piece of fire here. It's been pretty stubborn for us, and having troubles getting out around where you can see this little lighter red action here. As of today, we're pulling crews back out to the Vermillion Resort and readjusting our strategy and tactics out there, and a lot to do with the influence that we're getting up higher here out of the Cassidy Meadow, Balloon Dome area. As you can see, fire starting to back south here towards the Heights Meadow and come down. So getting back to right up here at Balloon Dome and Cassidy Meadow. So yesterday, I know a lot of folks heard about us doing some Aero Ignition. Let me back up. So right over in here is the South Fork of the San Joaquin River. Middle Fork comes down like this here. North Fork comes here. And then just down here, the South Fork takes off. And then Balloon Dome is right out in this country here. It's kind of hidden with the gray of the map. But, several weeks ago, fire crossed the South Fork. And if you've ever been out in this area, there's a lot of granite out there and places where fire shouldn't burn. And of course, we all know this year's been pretty extraordinary and fires are burning where we're not expecting them. It got across the San Joaquin River. It was kegged up in the rocks out there for a number of weeks. Air quality and all the smoke, as folks know, hampered the efforts to get aircraft up and see where that fire was and conversely getting troops in there on the ground to go after it. Not having good air quality for us means not getting troops on the ground, not being able to support them by the air with food and water, or if we have injuries of that sort, getting the firefighters off the ground and back to a medical facility is a big concern of ours. I don't know, 2 or 3 days ago, the fire came out of Balloon Dome and it backed down in here towards Cassidy Meadow and Rattlesnake Lake, excuse me. Once it got out into some better fuels out of the rock, it grabbed the southwest wind and made a push this northeast direction up towards the Middle Fork of the San Joaquin. We were able to get out the next day and take a look at it where it was at. There's the ridge here, the county line. I've been kind of referring to it as the county line ridge the last couple of days. This yellow line here, it's pretty broken and rocky ridge. Somewhat of a natural barrier, but not a complete natural barrier. Fire could get through there. And it kind of continued up around here where you see these little dots, these little red dots, and into the junction bluffs that drop off down into the San Joaquin River. It looked like there was opportunities there that it was going to hold itself up there and not get past that with any kind of steam. So we went up with the helicopter and did some Aero Ignition. We basically grabbed the ridge here, the junction bluffs, brought it around, kind of following what my cursor is doing here, out ahead of it, using the ridge systems and the trail systems, and then onto this county line ridge here and bringing it down. The idea there is a suppression action that we were using to use those natural barriers and get fire to back down slope and connect with the main fire. So that went really well for us. And as you can see out here where these little dots are, some of our Aero Ignition, it didn't really take up there. It's just really broken rocky ground. It didn't take too good up there, but as we grabbed the ridge here, it did pretty well, and it's staying on the ridge for the most part. It backed down and joined the main fire, basically taking vegetation out from in front of it so that it doesn't come out of here with a head of steam. As we came down, that it falls off the county line, what we lit kind of coming down in this direction. So down on low here, it has crossed our ridge, but that's okay because it's out here going south and away from town, from the Inyo and Mammoth Lakes area. Our main objective was to box off this northeast corner so that it couldn't keep pushing to the northeast there. So currently that fire in this area right here is still hanging up where we left it. And it continues to back down in this country here near Heights Meadow. Last reports that we got from aircraft flying some infrared missions, the fire still hung up on the ridge here. And that was just before sundown today. See, so I'm going to switch my screen here to a Google Earth image with the fire on it. So this is all still the same fire that I was just showing you. You can see where we tried to light in here, pretty rocky ground. All that brownish is rock. and you can kind of see what we followed here.
But Jeff, we
Underneath
can't.
this red, you can kind of.
Jeff, we can't see that screen, so you might just want to. Sorry, buddy.
I'm
Just
sorry.
stop share, and then.
My bad.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Don't want to stop you mid stride there, but stop that. Yeah, stop share, and then we'll just pop up a new screen. Thank you. Yeah.
You got it there now?
Not yet.
You have the Google Earth now?
Nope. So if you you'll have to stop share
Hold
and
on, I
then
got
and just start again. Yeah. There we go.
Sorry about
Thanks,
that.
Jeff. You're doing great, bud.
Okay, how we doing there?
Almost. A couple of seconds, I'm thinking. There we go. Way to go. Thanks,
Sorry
Jeff.
about that. So here's a Google Earth image of the area that I was just talking about. You can see here these 5 kind of red dots are part of our Aero Ignition pattern that we took. You can see that it's up in some rocks, so that's kind of why that didn't take. And you can see as the fire came in here, and it made its way through some rocks for sure, and through some vegetative stringers, tied in. You know, it bumped up against some of this rock outcropping. Don't necessarily expect that to hold it, but it's slowing the fire down significantly. What I was saying is down here, kind of in this red area, that's what we lit off of that ridge. We lit below to the left of this rock in here. It has creeped over a little bit, but not very much. But so just looking at here, this is the middle fork of the San Joaquin that comes up like this and heads up towards Devil's Post Pile. Fish Creek is down here just to orient you. Pond Lily Lake is right here. And then, shoot, I can't zoom out because the things are blocking here. But what I wanted to point out, and what if folks don't know me too well, I work on the Indian National Forest at the Mammoth Lakes Ranger District, and I've looked at this ground over the years quite a bit. So as we come up here, we've got Mammoth Mountain at the top of the screen and the Lakes Basin. This kind of spot here is the fire scar from the Rainbow Fire in 1994. Looking at this ground, you can see it's fairly open. You got some vegetation up in here, and it's timbered, but all that gray under there and all this stuff out here is all pumice. Like I said, there's timber, but underneath it is a lot of pumice. As the Rainbow Fire came up here, wind-driven fire pushed it up here, but it stopped and it hit all that pumice. So we really have a fairly good natural barrier up on National Monument, and the Rainbow Fire kind of came the bottom end of the monument and up in here. You'll see in a few moments some of our fire modeling, and it'll show you that the probabilities are very low for it to get back into here, and if it reached its lowest probabilities of furthest extension, it shows it stopping in the same place this Rainbow Fire stopped. Just to reiterate that, this piece here is a big brush field that burned during the Rainbow Fire. And it came up and it hit the ridgeline where all this timber and just pumicey ground is. That's really what held the Rainbow Fire in there. There's still to keep monitoring this fire up here and using that Aero Ignition as needed to clean up some of these, to get it to those rocks on our terms and let it back from the rocks instead of having what we would call head fire running towards those rocks and potentially spotting out ahead of itself. Some of our, we got this leading edge here. We'll keep an eye on that. It's going to creep around in there a little bit before it gets to the bluffs. And if we feel like we can get up there and do some air igniting, do that again, just to get us to start backing back towards the main fire. Really, what we've been looking at for our next move, Cushion Peak. So this escarpment here is a good natural barrier, and so we'd get in underneath it and do some more Aero Ignition west of the Cushion Peak area. Eye on the stuff down.
I think Jeff's frozen in time. Wait a little bit for Jeff to see if he can kind of make it back with us. Just while we have this time again, if you have any questions that you'd like the panelists to answer this evening, pop that in the Q&A. If you're on Facebook Live, do the same, and we'll certainly get to those questions. We'll moderate. There we go. I think Jeff just finished his screen, and I can't see his face anyway. But what we're going to do is we'll kind of work through the presentation. We'll address some of the common questions we've been hearing, and then we'll get to the Q&A. So let's just take a moment now while Jeff comes back. And Brendan, you want to kind of just introduce your next presenter?
Yes, hi, this is John Pendergrass, incident meteorologist.
Thank you, John.
Yes, I'm stationed here in Clovis on the south branch of the fire, and I've been providing weather information for the teams. This is my 12th day, so I've been able to get well versed in the weather conditions. And you know, what's making the predictions easy right now, at least in the short term, is we've got a strong high pressure area which is parked over California and the west. And what that's doing for us is it's keeping the humidity high at the fire area. So the elevation that the fire has been burning has not had a chance to temper its humidity day or night. And so the fire has been naturally progressing upslope, you know, each day, and even during the nighttime periods up towards the crest and getting in the higher elevations. One good caveat as we look forward in the weather forecast going into early next week, there's no wind systems that would be the most troubling thing if it were to happen. Fortunately, there's no wind systems other than local slope winds that are going to be occurring in this area going into early next week. So that's the one good thing, if there is a good thing. Without the wind, it's just going to be a humidity and temperature forecast, and that's playing ahead into early next week. The highest temperatures are going to be experienced in the forecast on Saturday, and then we're going to start abating weather-wise as far as cooling and a little bit higher humidity into next week. And the pattern will actually bring us back to more normal seasonal type weather conditions as far as temperature and humidity by around Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. So that's what we're looking at as far as the weather forecast, and what I've been providing is just getting through this period of really hot and dry conditions into the weekend. And then as next week greets us, we'll start tapering back to a more normal seasonal temperature and humidity. And without any significant wind systems ahead, I don't see until at least the middle of next week. And I'll stand by at the end of the presentation for any further specific questions. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We're now going to introduce and welcome Patty. Is that right? Patty Johnson is our fire behavior analyst. Thank you,
Yes,
Patty.
good evening. I'm going to pull up some images here. Let me share it. But while I'm working on that, I'll introduce myself. I'm Patty Johnson, and I am a fire behavior analyst working with the team. I do both short-term and long-term fire behavior analysis. So, you know, what's going to happen today, tomorrow, and then maybe what's going to happen down the road in another week. And then I also do a little bit of strategic planning, which means, you know, down the road a week when the fire moves here or there, what do we need to be prepared for strategically? Those are some of my tasks with the team. And then my normal day job, I'm actually a zone FMO, and I am from northern Minnesota, so quite opposite of you folks down here, but one thing we have very much in common is in my back door is the Boundary Waters Wilderness, which is a very large wilderness area with a lot of recreation use and a lot of interest from the community and values from the community with that being in their backyard. So with that, I'm going to kind of paint the picture of where we're at here this season and right now, what the fuels are like out there, why things are burning like they are, and then where this fire may be moving in the short and long term. So I hope everybody can see my map that's up. Okay. So this is a drought monitor map. There's many different varieties of drought monitor maps. It's one piece of information that we use to help make decisions. Of course, this isn't a surprise to anybody, but Southern California here is in an abnormal, moderate, and slightly severe drought, depending on which map you're looking at. So in those terms, this has been going on for a year or two here. All of the dead materials out there, from needle cast to large logs, are available to burn right now. And everything is burning when it comes in contact with fire. Go to the next slide. So this is a piece of information we also look at. These are called energy release component, ERC. It's a combination of different fuel conditions that they look at in terms of helping understand how much energy is in the fire. If you have a fire, we use it to help us understand the potential for having large fires, for fires to really move. And of course, you can see that we are in and above the 90th percentile for this indice for this area right now. And the trajectory is to kind of stay within this 90th to 90th percentile with these ERCs and the fuel conditions out there. So with that being said, I pulled up this to help demonstrate what is out there in terms of fuels and why the fire is burning in areas and it's not burning. So even though it's bone dry out there, there is some areas that do not want to burn, and things have been parking them. The fire's been parking itself. Down here on the west side in this finger that's been very active, it is getting up into some higher elevation vegetation, and it's not wanting to move through that, and it's holding in there. As the meteorologist mentioned, the relative humidities are higher up there, higher elevation. Maybe the fuel moistures are probably just a little bit higher, just enough that things don't want to burn. We also have a very short window during the day when things will burn. So in terms of the fuels heating up enough to be able to ignite and spread in that higher elevation, there's less of that potential than lower elevations. Where it has been moving, and I'll step back and just talk about this fuel map a little bit. The greens and the blues are all your timber type of fuels, and the oranges are your shrub fuels. The yellows are your grass type of vegetation. Then all the black is rock out there and stuff that won't burn. So with this, what this fire has been wanting to do up in this higher elevation is follow these timber fuel types, kind of this aqua color, dark green area. That's where it's been wanting to move to. And you can kind of see that around the edge here between the middle fork and the south fork. That's where it's wanting to move to. So when we start looking at where it's going to go and we look up the middle fork here, we see, first of all, we're going to run out of those timber fuels that it's really wanting to move into and get into some of that shrub fuel. And then it's going to get into that fire scar area, which Jeff talked about a little bit. And that stuff is not wanting to burn too much right now. But overall, the biggest barrier is going to be all this rock up here in this ridge top up here. So really the only way fire is going to get over into this Mammoth Lakes area is to come up the middle fork and squeeze through a very small area of fuels up here. I've been working on some different probability models in terms of what's the likelihood of that type of thing happening. Very small likelihood. 2% type of likelihood that that type of event would occur out there. And those are some of the modeling tools that we have available to us to help inform us with the decisions and the operations that folks are doing out there. So the other map I want to show you folks too, This is another model. It's called a near-term fire behavior because we do it for short-term. So this is 4 days of fire behavior out there in terms of where it might progress based on the predicted weather that we're getting from the weather service that goes into this model. And so it looks at what the fuels are, what the terrain is like, what the weather is like, puts it together, projects where the fire might go to. So you'll see this is the middle fork right here, and then Fish Creek is right here. So it's not showing this fire wanting to make any big runs in the next 4 days, which is kind of when the weather is going to be more critical. After Sunday, we start to see that weather moderating. So not only is the probability of it low, but also the fire behavior projection models are showing that it doesn't want to go in that direction either. So that's what I wanted to show folks tonight in terms of what's out there, what we're seeing, what the models are, and the tools that we have available to help us make decisions. And next up will be Amber Ortega, and she will talk about smoke.
Hey, everybody, can you hear me?
Yes, we got
Good.
you. Thanks, Amber.
I'm using a cell phone hotspot, so I'm worried it's going to be choppy. Let me share my screen.
But you're in Mammoth Lakes, so you got fantastic cell reception, right?
You would think. Yes. No, I am. All right. Can you guys see what I'm seeing here?
Yes. Thank you.
Let's get that smaller. Is that what I want? I want this one. All right. So I'm Amber Ortega. I am an air resource advisor here on the Creek Fire. I'm currently stationed over in the North Incident Command Post, but I'll be moving down to the South tomorrow. And I am from the Rocky Mountain region of the U.S. Forest Service. So I took a drive today, and this is Minaret Vista right at sunset. Just to orient you, I really needed to get eyes on the smoke here because forecasting smoke in Mammoth Lakes is not trivial. So this is a panorama. You can see that fire sunset there. You can see the smoke coming off of the forest, right kind of in the middle left of the screen. That's what our ops lead there was talking about. And then this is actually on the far left, Mammoth Mountain. So what we're seeing here is a combination of different wind fields at different heights in the atmosphere. I bring this up because, again, forecasting smoke in Mammoth is not easy because you have so many topographical features and you have that daily diurnal wind shift component, not to mention the high pressure situations. There's a lot going on here. Earlier today, probably from 5 to 7 a.m. if you were in Mammoth, air was good last night. It was good very early this morning, and then hazardous air quality from the smoke poured in between 5 and 7 in the morning, and then it was pretty gunky here all day until that we had an afternoon wind shift, which came from the east. So from the Great Basin, there's no fires out there right now. It's clean. And if you look at the Mammoth Mountain on the left, clean air was coming from that side, pushing the overall smoke over to the west. That's why you had a clearing today, and it was good air quality. So I just wanted to point that out. The fire, as we know from looking at the maps, is not far from Mammoth Lakes. So the smoke column is not far from Mammoth Lakes. And whether that smoke column comes then down or the drainage winds come down through Mammoth Lakes or they get pushed back to the west is really determined by the wind fields and how they can shift over the course of a day. I bring that up just as a visual. So when I put out my smoke maps, smoke forecast here, so I'll put these out every morning. This is a smoke forecast for the whole fire. This is today's. I'll talk about the fire a little bit in these. I mentioned the tactical fire operations. I also mentioned how there's a lot of heavy fuels in the area that contributed to the intense smoke. So
just a sec, Amber, we can only still see your beautiful panoramic view of the vista. I know you're probably on a cell phone, but
let me stop sharing and reshare.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Amber.
Where do we share in? Sharing this guy. Can you see that now?
Yep, thank you.
Great. So this is my smoke outlook. I put it out every day. You can either find it on the Sierra National Forest Facebook page, or if you Google California smoke blog, it'll be under hashtag Creek Fire. And all the smoke forecasts for all of California are actually up there if you're interested in other fires. So I talk a little bit about the fire. One of the reasons we saw such heavy smoke was because there's a lot of heavy fuels and a lot of dead fuels in that area. So even though not a lot of acres were burned over the last couple of days, there was a lot of smoke production from those few acres because there are so many available fuels. Everything's super dry and there's a lot of dead there, as we've already heard. I wanted to put that in there since people are asking how many acres, why is there so much smoke? That's why it seems like there's a lot of smoke for not that many acres total that have been added to the map. Then I give a little smoke briefing. We're forecasting for this whole portion here. Mammoth Lakes is one of those portions. And then if you go down a little bit further, you see the breakdown of all those different locations. Every location on my map, we have a smoke monitor on that. If you look at the forecast, you can see some links down here. If you go to the fire and smoke map, which is the first link, that gives you all that monitor data if you want to look at it yourself. And if we focus in on the Mammoth Lakes here, let me zoom in just a bit more. I don't know if it'll translate to Zoom. But you can see Mammoth Lakes. And then I have a 24-hour, the last 24 hours of data is what's presented there in the bar graph. The color here indicates the air quality index for the previous day. Then I give a little forecast, and then I give an air quality index forecast for the next 2 days. What's difficult with Mammoth is the same pattern we see here in the bar graph for the last 24 hours. We saw very unhealthy, hazardous air in the morning, and then when we got that wind shift and the clean air from the east, it went down to good. And you guys have probably seen this the last couple of days. Air quality in Mammoth is either great or really bad. So I actually put hazardous on for the next 2 days, not because you're going to see a full 24 hours of hazardous. I don't actually think the average 24-hour concentration will be in the hazardous AQI, but you will see periods of hazardous air when we get that smoke spilling over the Sierra Crest into Mammoth. So I just want to explain that part of it, where you're going to see periods of clean and periods of very unhealthy to hazardous air. Right now, we're pretty clean here. I think we're going to almost see the repeat pattern of the last day. Tonight, or right now into tonight, we'll see cleaner air. We might see some smoke building in late overnight into the morning hours, and we're probably going to see again those high levels coming in tomorrow afternoon. I update the smoke forecast around 8 a.m. every day, and again, it'll be on the California Smoke blog and on the Facebook Sierra National Forest. Thanks, everybody. End of report.
Thank you, Amber. I believe Steve Watkins is going to speak to us next. Steve is the incident commander. And then Steve, if you want to just finish up and then hand it over to Jeff. I think Jeff got kind of cut off.
Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, good evening, everyone. Steve Watkins, Deputy Incident Commander for California Team 14. Real quick, I'd just like to give you a little update and talk about myself real quick before I dive into this. My current job, like I said, I'm the Deputy Incident Commander for California Team 14. I've been with the team for 11 years, since 2009. Come through the ranks as a division soup all the way to operations now as the deputy. I work for Bureau of Land Management out of the Bakersfield Field Office, part of the SynCal District. Also, as you know, also help Bishop there because we're in a service first agreement with Bishop. So a little background, I do have some knowledge and I've worked several fires in the Inyo over the years. First, I want to talk about real quick about communities. I know there's been concerns about different communities are rated differently, and that's not true. Each community is very important, and each one has value. What happens is in the decision making, when we're looking at that, people think when we make a decision on certain communities, it's not that we're concerned about this one more than the other. It's just the values at the time. And what makes those decisions is weather, resources, fuel, terrain, topography, all that. So I wanted to say something. What's been concern for your community, and it's bothered us, is getting information to you. I know we've done things. Our team's been on this fire for over the last 8 days, and getting information out to you and timely has not happened from other teams. And I apologize for that. We will strive to do better to make sure we get the information out to you, because your community is important to us. So I just wanted to let you know. I talked about a little bit about making prioritizing. Right now, the challenges for this incident and really the rest of the incidents in the state of California are resources shortages. And what I mean by that, locally, regionally, nationally, it's affecting us in this firefight. We only have so many resources available to help us suppress the fire. And as the season goes on, we're obviously in October, and what happens is on the federal side, a lot of our federal resources, engine modules, hotshot crews, helicopters, water tenders, they end up over the time, as the season goes on, they time out. And that's one of the things we're running into right now is certain resources are timing out. They have to go back home. They're either timing out because they've done 14 days or they extended for 21 days, and then they have to come back. And that's one of the challenges we're having right now is we get a good portion of resources on this incident, and over time we start losing them because they've timed out of their 14 or 21 days. And there's been a lot of resources on this incident that I can tell you has made their second or third tour, either 14 or 21. There's certain resources that have been here for over 30 days. So when we talk about the priority shortages. Safety issues, I would like to talk about safety issues. I know there's been a lot of concern. Jeff talked about on the map and priorities out there and what the fire is doing. And there's been concerns about what we're doing out there for firefight and why aren't the firefighters out in certain areas. Well, the first thing we have to do for our firefighters when we're engaging out there is the number one priority is safety for their well-being out there. And secondly is logistically supporting them while they're there. Those are the two challenges we have as an incident management team before we make a decision to put boots on the ground. The first thing is safety. Can we support them medically to get them out? In certain areas where they're out there miles, which would take hours by foot or even hours by horseback to get them out. The number one thing, obviously, if we had road systems closed, that's great, but we're in the wilderness. We don't have that capability where we have road systems, we have trail systems. One of the biggest assets that we love to use is helicopters. But the problem is, you know, we just heard about smoke. Amber was talking about that, and smoke conditions hamper that tool to use to extract a firefighter if they get injured out there on the line. So that's one of the issues when we see that about safety. The second one is logistically support. We have to make sure we can logistically support them while they're out there on the line. And what I mean by that is food, supplies, what they need to continue on. And when we're out in the wilderness, the hardest thing to do is get that out to them. Once again, the number one choice is flying them in by helicopter. Second one is using pack mules, but that takes time. If we use pack mules, we can only get so much out there at a time. And when we do, we can only support maybe 1 or 2, 3 crews at a time sometimes, and that makes it tough for us. So in certain geographical areas when we have crews out there. So those are things we need to be considered when we make decisions. Is it safely, and can we logistically support them? I also want to make the emphasis that we do have PIO trap lines out there in the Mammoth Lake area. They're updated daily with our PIO people over there in Mammoth, information every morning. And if you're not getting that, please let us know. Stuart, that's really important. If that's not getting done, we need to know that so we can get that information out to you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'm just going to jump back to Jeff. Jeff, if you're still here, if you unfortunately cut off, I think, mid-presentation or towards the end of presentation. Just want to make sure you had an opportunity to get through your presentation for the community.
Thanks, Stu. Thanks, Stu.
Welcome.
I'm not sure where I cut off. I know where I think I cut off. But was I talking about aircraft? Does anybody shake their head? Yeah. Okay. So I was mentioning the helicopters. Over the last, today we had that bad air quality, like Amber was saying, and we didn't get much flying in today. But over the last 5 days, we've averaged 110,000 gallons of water dropping a day. So just for perspective there, on the days we can't fly, we've been using aircraft and water dropping missions and dropped quite a bit of water when we can. The other thing that I was going to get to, and I'm going to go back and share my screen here to the Google Earth. Maybe give me a thumbs up when people see that. Stu, if you can. Okay. Patty showed you the 4-day fire behavior forecast, and if you notice, there was a little finger that came down the slope here, touched Fish Creek, and it was held up there in the next 4 days. It was just a little finger following this green stringer that comes down into the creek here, and then you saw a little spot off to the north of it. That spot was right in this little green area right here at Pond Lily Lake. And so if anybody remembers last year, we had the Pond Lily fire that was right currently on this bench right here. The trail system coming out of Devil's Post Pond down the Middle Fork and crosses over to Fish Creek, runs on this bench currently right here. So I point that out because as of yesterday, I sent over 2 of my ops folks overhead, and today there's the El Carrizo hot shots from the Cleveland National Forest were sent over to Mammoth as well. So their mission over there is to scout some lines, pre-identified kind of by myself, down here at Pond Lily Lake, this trail system, getting that in shape to, if fire did cross Fish Creek and being able to get there, you can see that's tied from rock to rock, good natural barriers. They're also going to be going up to the Devil's Post Pile area and from the Reds Middle Pack Station and using the trail system there to tie it back into the Middle Fork of the San Joaquin River. And then the purple line here represents the county line, but that ridge there going up over Pumice Butte and up towards the Thumb, just near Lakes Basin there, and then over to Mammoth Mountain, they'll be scouting that, and that'll be our control lines if fire does ever decide to cross Fish Creek and want to make a move towards Mammoth. They'll be over there working these lines. We're going to support them with more crews as they come in and we finish projects on the west side. We'll be getting more people over there. Currently, the fire hasn't crossed Fish Creek, hasn't dropped down into Fish Creek. So the need to get a lot of resources over there right now is not the case, and getting folks over there to start scouting and have a place for the crews to work once they do get there. So those are the actions that we're planning on the east side of the river there, and around Mammoth Lakes, putting in some control lines to if we have to fight fire on that side. Again, looking at the modeling there, it shows us that it's not going to really get there. And ground truth in this, and from knowledge and experience, and seeing fires out in this area, it's going to have a tough time burning through here. Granted, it burned through the other rivers earlier in the month, but we're in a different time of year now, shorter burning periods, and getting into these cooler temperatures. I think I'll end with that. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jeff. And actually, just want to thank, Jeff, Patty, Amber, Steve, Aaron, and everybody. Sorry, Brendan, for your time. Very detailed, very appreciative. And I'm sure our community is acknowledging all the hard work that goes into managing a fire of this magnitude. With that, we're just going to move to Deb Schweitzer, U.S. Forest Service Public Affairs Specialist, just to kind of answer and just kind of address some of the common questions. And then we're going to get right to the questions in the chat room and Facebook. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me. Good. I want to talk about a couple of things that have been coming up. Maps and maps. Maps as in the maps we've been looking at on the screen, and maps as in management action points. There was a lot of concern this morning for some maps that were showing that the fire had crossed Fish Creek with some satellite imagery that was being showed. And understandably, that would have been a reason for concern for the town of Mammoth Lakes. So I really want to emphasize that people should be going to the incident for their maps, mostly because when the incident's getting their mapping done, they are using observations from firefighters on the ground. They're using observations from air operations working the fire during the day, and then they're using their infrared flight imagery at night to define those maps and ground truth any kind of confusion or lines that might not be clear. So use those maps. They are your best and most accurate source. A lot of the other imagery that people like to go to, like CalTopo or MODIS or ArcGIS even, uses satellite imagery to make estimations at the heat signatures that they're seeing, but depending on when that satellite's passing through, it could be highly wrong, or it could be misreading things even like clouds or smoke plumes. And there's a high error rate on those. So as much as possible, I know people like to try to see what's going on and figure it out, but the maps that the incident are giving you are the best and most accurate and vetted maps, and I highly advise sticking to those. The other is maps management action points, and there's been a lot of questions about when and how and if the management action points have crossed. I think there's also been a lot of confusion about what was being done at each management action point. So the pincushion management action point was crossed at the very, very northern corner, I want to say about a week ago. And we did exactly what that management action point said we would do, which was to have a conversation about standing up more resources responding to the town of Mammoth Lakes. That's what that map did, and we did that. That was Poncho and Jeff having a conversation very similar to what we're having here about what we're going to do. The Fish Creek management action point has not been crossed as of last aerial observation. So, and there's been a lot of discussion about that one means we're evacuating. That is not it. That is a conversation with the Mono County Sheriff about the potential of a pre-evacuation or a warning. Because these management action points were put in 3 weeks ago when days were longer, hotter, drier, we had some red flag warnings for winds. How we would have handled that then versus now is going to be very, very different. And again, management action points aren't triggers. They're a point for us to get together as Forest Service, Mono County, Town of Mammoth Lakes, and figure out what our strategy is. And again, because we are getting later in the season, and because fire behavior is much more moderate than it was several weeks ago, how that conversation would go now would probably be very, very different. So just know that that's part of the point of why it's not a trigger or an absolute decision. It's a process for us to figure out our strategy, but that management action point allows us to have that conversation. So I'm hopeful that that will help, because there's been a lot of questions about the management action points and if we've been observing them, and we have. And then my last thing I really want to share is I've been hearing a lot about, what are we doing and is this a full containment fire? And from day one, this has been a full containment fire. And if you remember, day one on the Creek Fire was a very stressful day for a lot of people being evacuated and homes burning and what have you. This is not a fire that should be taken lightly in any way, shape, or form of the word. It is the largest single fire in California's history. It's a mega fire. It has been an absolute beast for fire responders from day one. And we take it very, very seriously. Full containment, 100% full containment is our objective and always has been. And I know that that can look a little bit confusing for the town of Mammoth Lakes, who hasn't seen a lot over here. But again, based on the size of the fire, the sort of fire behavior we're seeing, and the resources that we have available, we really have been attacking this as hard as we could, the best way we could. And again, prioritizing, communities at risk first. And so our goal is to be done with this fire. Like everyone else, we want it contained. We fully understand that the smoke, we fully understand that having this fire outside of your community for the last 6 weeks has been stressful and anxious. And again, our fire crews have been out all summer numerous times. We want to get home to our families too. So full suppression is the strategy, 100% full suppression, and always has been. Those are the things I wanted to address, so we can get to the chat box now.
Thank you, Deb. Very helpful. So hopefully that answers many of the questions that we've been hearing and seeing, and certainly many of the questions that we're looking at on the Zoom chat room and also on our Facebook Live page. With that, I'm going to take it and hand it over to Lauren. Lauren, if you want to start working through the Q&A in the chat room, and we'll have the panel address and answer those questions as best they can. Thank you.
Of the fire that is currently burning in this part of the backcountry, can you estimate the percentage of beneficial fire versus destructive fire?
I don't see any takers taking that question. Jeff, I know, Jeff, you were eager to respond to a lot of these questions. Are you still with us on the Zoom call? Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Jeff.
I can't tell the difference between mute and unmute. Yeah, so I hope there's another question on there talking about the ecological benefits of the fire. So I'm going to try to hit them both, I think, a little bit. But, you know, my time on this fire and looking around, you know, definitely down around the Shaver Lake area and coming up on the southern end of this fire, some very high intensity, damaging wildfire in there. It's not pretty. But as we move east here, from Huntington Lake and up into this higher elevation, the flights that I've taken, I've really been impressed with the low intensity kind of ground fire that I'm seeing. It's the natural kind of fire regime or fire intensities that we want out there. Flying around, you know, you really don't see scorched trees. And it might get an alignment every now and then on a slope, or you can see where the wind got it and burned a hole in the canopy. But generally speaking, out on the east side of the fire, once you leave the Huntington Lake and the Kaiser Wilderness area and move up the South Fork of the San Joaquin and up to the Middle Fork, it's a good natural burning fire out in there. I hope that answers that question. I think it looks really good, and it's something that if we had if it was another year and we were trying to manage a fire, it'd be looking like what we'd want it to be looking like. Anybody else?
All right, I think we're good. Thank you, Jeff. Lauren, next question, please.
We have heard for many weeks that natural barriers would keep the fire from advancing towards Mammoth, and there was a small likelihood and low probability that that fire would get to Mammoth. Now it's right at our back door. What plans do you have in place to prevent the fire coming over Mammoth Pass?
I think Jeff covered quite a lot of that in your presentation. You just want to quickly summarize, Jeff, you know, the main suppression tactics for the fire at this time where it's located?
Sure. Yeah. As I mentioned, you know, that we have folks moving into Mammoth yesterday and today, and scouting lines, you know, generally speaking, in the Devil's Post Pile area, just south of Devil's Post Pile, using the trail systems around Pond Lily Lake and the ridge lines going up from Pond Lily to Mammoth Lakes Basin, and then from there up to Mammoth Mountain. So we're scouting those lines and plan on beginning that work starting tomorrow and having the crews in there putting in line.
Great. And when you say line for the non-fire folks out there, Jeff, that's a defensive measure?
Correct. It's cutting a field break in the vegetation, you know, basically trees, brush, whatnot, and then doing a scrape of the ground fields down to mineral soil so that fire can't spread across the ground there. And
just one more question for the group or the folks listening. And what would be the the general width of that fire?
Yeah, generally
that line?
speaking, typical hand crew line construction is 10 to 15 foot saw cut, cutting brush and trees, and then a 2 to 3 foot scrape of the ground to make a trail. So basically a trail that we normally walk on out there in the wilderness, that's about the width of maybe double a trail width to get down to mineral soil and prevent fire spread along the ground.
Great, thank you. Lauren, next question.
With several images being circulated from the vista in the last 24 hours, the fire looked very close to the back of MMSA. How far exactly is the northeast edge from the fire, both the back of MMSA and from the southwest corner of Devil's Postpile?
Jeff, do you want to take a stab at that? I know probably most. You probably don't even look at a map. You can just, yeah.
Yeah. So exactly. I don't know if I can give you exactly right now. The northeast edge of the fire to Mammoth Mountain is approximately 5 air miles. And then Devil's Postpile probably 7 would be my guess right now without looking at a map and measuring it out. But yeah, 3 to 7 miles to the Inyo and into those areas.
And that information's made available from the PIO team, Team 14, each and every day. So if you're not getting that information, make sure you do email us at creekfire@townofmammoth.ca.gov, and we'll certainly get you that information. Lauren, next question, please.
With no precipitation likely coming to Mammoth before mid-November, do we still feel a weather event is more likely to put out this fire than a firefighting action?
So Jeff again.
Jeff again.
We're going to continue to make every effort we can to take suppression actions and get to a place that we can safely put firefighters, and we'll continue doing that really until the rain or snow comes. Ultimately, the rain and snow is what's going to put out this fire completely and keep the smoke from still rising in the air and coming into town. I believe we'll see smoke. If you get up to Minaret Vista up on Mammoth Mountain or Mammoth Pass, you're going to see smoke out to the west until we see rain and snow come. But yeah, by all means, we'll have folks on the ground and fighting fire and mopping up and taking all the actions necessary until that time comes.
Just a quick follow-up question, Jeff, or to Steve, on the daily incident briefings. Full containment is kind of identified as October 31, 2020. But what does really full containment mean, and is that a kind of realistic time frame that the community of Mammoth Lakes can expect?
I'll go ahead and take this one, Jeff.
Thank you, Steve.
Full containment is when we've got line around the fire and it's held into perimeter that it's stagnant for a period of time. We have line around it, either it's through the wilderness or natural barriers, time frames of that. I think I haven't looked at the latest 204 that we come out and you guys get the update, but I believe it's sitting around 56%. I think that's the new number for today. I could be wrong, but I think it's been 55, 56. It's going to take some time to get 100% containment, and 100% containment usually is making sure the fire is going to stay within the footprint that it exists in. And for, like Jeff said, for this one, it's going to take a season-ending weather event, something like that, which we're not experts in the weather condition. We know we're not seeing anything on the horizon due to moisture coming in anytime soon. And that's what's going to take. It's going to take a significant precip from rain or either low elevation snow to come in and hold this. So I would anticipate containment for this fire. It could, I'm going to go out there and say it could be at least another 30 days to have full containment. Doesn't mean it's going to keep spreading, but have full containment where we feel comfortable that it's going to stay and we can produce firefighters out there in the risk. So it's going to take some time.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that level of detail for the community. Most appreciative. Lauren, next question. Thank you.
Is it safe to assume that next summer in Mammoth, given we survived this fire, will result in a lot less fire activity since all the fuel is burning now?
I think that's you, Jeff. I think you were talking about all the good fire on the backside there that will hopefully give us some protection in the future.
Yeah, well, I mean, I immediately behind Mammoth here in Mammoth Mountain, the Lions fire that we had 2 years ago, just north of the Middle Fork and west of Devil's Postpile is a place that fire's not going to burn for a few more years. And then the footprint of the creek fire is not going to burn for 5 or 10 years. That's not to say, I mean, whatever we stop out here, lightning's a natural occurring event, and that area out there around Pincushion Peak and all that is a lightning magnet. And we very well could have another fire out there next year once we get lightning. It's not going to be 340,000 acres because it doesn't have that much room to grow, but we could have a fire in Yosemite National Park to the north of us that pushes smoke. California has fires and they're going to keep coming. Having one right in the back door where we have it now is probably not going to happen for a handful of years.
Thank you, Jeff. Lauren, if we need to, we can kind of collate some of the questions together and for the benefit of everybody's time this evening. Thank you.
Why, when we look at the AQ sites like airnow.gov, do they not make sense, i.e. low readings when my eyes tell me the AQ is terrible?
Hey everybody, I didn't quite leave yet. I was just about to duck out of here because I got to get back over to the other side of the whole fire in the next 2 hours, which is a stretch. Hold on. There we go. Can you repeat the question? I believe it was when I look at the AQ sites, why are they not up to date or showing something different?
Yeah, why do they read low when my eyes tell me they are not low? I don't want to get into air pollution 101 here, but there is a difference between visibility and mass-based concentrations of smoke. Oftentimes visibility can be affected by things like relative humidity. When the relative humidity is 100%, we have fog on the ground. So you can't see very well, but that isn't smoke. So sometimes the smoke particles themselves can take up water, which gives them more of a visible effect. Your visibility is attenuated or you can't see quite as far. One of the best websites you can go to is fire.airnow.gov. That will show you both your kind of EPA standard reference particle monitors. That will show you mobile smoke monitors that the Forest Service and the local air districts have put out. That will also show you some low-cost sensors that citizens can buy themselves and put out. And they have some quality control measures on those to make sure that things are trying to read similar methodology, similar concentrations. That website also gives you the satellite detection of smoke. So you can look at that. When you look at satellite smoke, that's just looking straight down. You're not necessarily getting what's at the surface. Sometimes when you look far away, say you're at some vista in Yosemite or you're on top of the mountain there, and you look far out, you're seeing really, really far. So smoke can look really bad when you're looking up in the air or across a valley. But when you're on the bottom of the valley where people live, sometimes smoke isn't that bad. That would be during the day. When you're under an inversion, the opposite is true. If you're up high, it looks pretty clean. You can see a low-lying smoke level. When you're down the valley, you can't see very far. So there's a bit of a difference between just what you see with your eyes, which is the visibility, and what you see, what you're actually breathing in terms of the mass of smoke coming in your lungs. And then just a kind of rule of thumb, if you can see a smoke plume in the distance, that means the air is pretty clean between you and that smoke plume. It's when it looks real hazy across the street and those trees just across the drive look a little faded out. That's when the smoke levels are pretty high.
And to protect your health, you can come inside. You can use a HEPA filter in your HVAC system. We can put out resources for what you can do to mitigate your own smoke impacts. Hopefully that answered your question there.
Great, thank you. I know, Lauren, we have a bit of a time constraint for some of the crew from Team 14. Might have to jump off in the next 5 or 10 minutes, but we'll try and answer as many questions as we can until 8:30, if that's okay. So let's jump on and keep going. Thank you, Lauren.
Are you using the same management action points that were established earlier? Have you added any new ones? What is the next management action point if the fire does cross Fish Creek? And what management action points would it take to evacuate the community of Mammoth Lakes? Generally, the gist of it.
I can take that, Stu.
Perfect, good, thanks, Poncho. And it was either you or Deb, so thank you.
Muted, what is it?
We have the 2 management action points. We have not changed them. The pincushion management action point has been touched by the fire, as Deb mentioned, was touched by the fire about a week ago. And Jeff and I got on the phone and talked about what our actions were going to be at that time, understanding that the management action points had been put together and had been formulated nearly a month before, when the fire was spotting a third to a half a mile out ahead of itself and was really ripping and roaring. Things have changed. Weather's changed, terrain's changed. Time has gone by. The burning period is much shorter now. The next management action point that we have actually follows the bottom of Fish Creek. And what that management action point is then we begin, if it were to cross Fish Creek. And actually our concern was not it crossing Fish Creek where it looks like it might cross Fish Creek by Pond Lily Lake, but actually further to the right on the map. The Fish Creek management action point, again, is simply a conversation between the city, the sheriff's department, the Forest Service, all the related agencies. Is what, we would then begin to look at the fire. Okay, the fire has crossed Fish Creek. We look at our projected runs of the fire. What could it do? How much time do we have? When we initially put them together, we were thinking if it spotted across Fish Creek coming at us rapidly, it would be a pre-evacuation notice, which is simply notifying people that they may need to go with a ready, set, go type system. However, the weather has changed. Things have really changed. That management action point is still there, but again, it will simply be a conversation between the team, myself, Frank Frevo, the Mammoth fire chief, Sheriff Braun. It'll be a conversation amongst all of us as to what our course of action would be at that time. Does that make sense?
Great, thank you, Poncho. Lauren, next question, please.
When was the last infrared images taken?
Yeah, I take that again. Hey, so every evening, overnight, anywhere between midnight and sometimes 4 a.m., we have a aircraft that flies over and does the infrared flights. So generally speaking, every morning or by 4 or 5 in the morning, we can see that infrared image. Every now and then, the plane might go down mechanical, or over time, the aircraft crew needs a day off. So there's periods of time where we don't get that infrared flight. We just went through a little cycle of that happening where the aircraft crew needed some days off. They worked with us. We got them every other night for about 3 nights there, or 6 nights, because they're taking days off. But without any mechanical failures of that aircraft, we should see that consistently here for another week or so. So generally speaking, they're every night, but they lapse every now and then.
Thank you, Jeff. Just quickly before we take the next question, I do want to thank our crew from Team 14 on the Creek Fire. So that was John, Patty, Amber that just left us, and then Steve. I want to thank you for your time this evening. They're going to sign off. They've got other duties to attend to, but I believe Jeff can stay with us and most of the panelists can stay with us as well. And we'll try and get to as many questions as we can till 8:30. So thank you again, Team 14. Appreciate your time this evening.
Stuart, thank you so much for facilitating this tonight. We do appreciate that. And I wish everyone a safe and blessed evening.
Thank you, Steve. Lauren.
Can you talk about what is going on in the area west of Edison Lake? What is the challenges you've been getting to containment there and when you're expecting to achieve it?
Yeah, so you know, we a couple different tactics that we've tried to take out there, and one was being just protecting the infrastructure around Lake Thomas Edison, the Vermillion Valley Resort, and Mono Hot Springs area. It was point protection where we're going in doing structure protection, putting in pumps and hose lays, doing some defensive firing around those structures, and essentially letting the fire move on past. We got to a point about a week ago where we got the resources in, mainly hotshot crews that are our typical crews that will go out in the wilderness and cut a bunch of line like I was mentioning before. We found an opportunity to go direct, and that's getting right on the fire's edge, putting it construction hand line, and progressing forward that way. That's without looking at the map directly right now, that's probably the 3 to 5 mile stretch from Vermillion Valley Resort to the South Fork of the San Joaquin, where fire had held up there in the natural barrier with the river. Crews got in there. We're making great progress. About halfway out through there, got to a point where fire just wanted to burn, and every time they tried to get around it, it would spot over their lines. With the poor air quality, we didn't have the aircraft to back them up and do bucket, water dropping missions, and just really having to kind of keep going back over the same piece of ground. But mainly just we had that southwest wind flow in a steep, rugged terrain, and not having the air support out there. Typically a hotshot crew probably in that country can cut about a quarter mile of hand line a day, quarter to a half mile a day. With a 5 mile stretch out there, that's not very much a day. And when you got to back up and try it again and keep going after day. The other challenge there was just that logistical support that Steve, the IC, talked about a little bit ago, and not really having that. The crews were hiking in and out of that area to their starting and ending points every day. So, hour to 2 hour hikes in, cutting line all day, fighting fire, not having the air support, and then having to hike back out to a place where they could get food and water to replenish for the next day. Pretty challenging, a lot of hard work, and it wears them down. And then when their line's not holding and they got to start all over again, that can be frustrating.
Thank you, Jeff. Lauren, next question.
Will you be discussing the forest closure and when it may reopen?
I think that's a cue for Poncho.
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Thank you.
Right now, the forest closure is the forest outside of the wilderness areas is open. The wilderness areas on the Inyo National Forest are closed. I had a discussion today with our regional leadership team about reopening some of the wilderness areas, and I have not got a response from them. But my proposal to them is to close those areas that allow access into the Creek Fire and the Sequoia Complex, which is got fire in the Golden Trout Wilderness, and then reopen everything else, both for day hikes and for camping. When we originally closed it, Yosemite was closed, Sequoia Kings Canyon was closed, The Sierra National Forest is still closed. And so many of our trails, our wilderness trails that leave this area, say Bishop Creek, leaving out of Bishop Creek to Paiute Pass, when you hit the top of the mountain, you're going on to the Sierra National Forest, and they are closed at this point because of the fire. So we are working on it. We're opening it up as we can, safely, because we want the public to be safe. And we don't want to have to go in and rescue anybody because they got too close to the fire. So we're trying to prevent that, because believe it or not, some people will go right to the fire if they have the opportunity. So we're trying to prevent that, but we do want to open up as much as we can for the public.
This is Deb, and I would just, for clarification, the wilderness areas that are in the Inyo and White Mountains are open. It is just the wilderness areas in the Sierra Nevada side of the Inyo that are closed.
See, that's why I keep her on staff, so she keeps me pointed the right direction.
Laura, next question. We're getting few. Are there any questions on Facebook that we need to address?
I will look at that next. Are there plans for of all the standing dead trees that surround Mammoth and Devil's Post Fire?
Putting on my other hat as the district fire management officer at Mammoth there, that definitely is a problem that we're having with the beetle kill and whatnot that's going on in all the Sierras or the Sierra Nevada. We address those as we can. We try to go after the ones that are hazardous, that are going to threaten infrastructure or roads. And, there's a lot of trees out there. And I don't know that we're going to get them all at once, but we're picking away at them slowly there and really trying to go after the ones that are going to threaten roads or infrastructure.
Thanks, Jeff. Lauren, I think we're up to Facebook.
Is there any water or fire retardant being dropped to stop this fire, and where is this water supply coming from?
Jeff, I think you're right. I think we've been dropping water, right?
Yeah, no, we've definitely been dropping water. Most of those are most of the water dropping that the helicopters dip out of the lakes, the surrounding lakes that are out there out in the wilderness, working closely with our resource advisors, and not dipping out of lakes that have culture or ecologically sensitive features in them, like the yellow, I'm going to mess it up, but like frogs and fish that are endangered species. But, we watch that closely, but numerous lakes out in that area, Lake Thomas Edison for one, and Florence Lake. Those are some of the big ones. And then there's numerous other small lakes out there that we're getting water out of. Currently, over the last week or so, and since I've really been a part of the creek fire, we haven't used any retardant from fixed wing aircraft, mainly because of the air quality. They can't fly much when there's much smoke in the air that's obscuring their view of the ridge tops and whatnot. And then, out there in the Cassidy Meadows area and the point of interest that we've been talking about tonight, without troops on the ground out there, air taker drops are fairly ineffective. They may slow the fire down for a time being, but unless you can get folks out on the ground to work those retardant lines, they're really pretty much ineffective. They'll eventually dry up and the fire will just burn through them. So retardant drops are really meant to work in coordination with ground resources. And so we haven't been dropping retardant lately. And there was a plan to do some of that here recently, but air quality didn't allow for that.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Laura, next question.
What happens if the wind picks up? Can embers blow into Mammoth and start new fires?
Got that one, Jeff?
Yep. Yeah, it would take a pretty significant wind, which we're used to on the east side. There's definitely the possibility out there that we're going to see a wind event before this is all over to some extent. The fire's getting to a place there, like I showed on Google Earth a little bit ago, without a lot of not a lot of vegetation, receptible fuel on the other side of the river. I really believe that area up there, Pumice Butte and Red Cone, and going up into the Mammoth Pass, it's timbered, but it's got it doesn't have a lot of ground fuel, and that's embers aren't going to land in the trees necessarily and sustain fire. They need to land on the ground and the ground fuels and build at that point. At this point, a big wind's not gonna. It may spread fire. There, but it's not going to be throwing spots to create new fires out ahead of itself.
That's very reassuring. Good to hear. Thank you, Jeff. Lauren, I know we're still doing some good time. I think we'll try and take as many questions. Do we have any call-in questions, Lauren, or are they just all Facebook right now?
Yeah, we have one call-in question from Letty Bravo.
Great.
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Letty. Letty, are you there? Okay, moving on. Any chance the wilderness restrictions might change before December?
Back to you, Poncho.
I would say yes. They will probably change before December. We're trying to make incremental changes now, but again, some of it is going to depend on that season-ending weather event for the fire. We just don't want to take a chance of somebody getting injured by being down too close to the fire and having something happen. But again, I'm not going to predict the weather, but I would say by December we should be able to have most of the forest open up. I don't know about the Sierra National Forest once you get over the crest onto their side, but on our side we should be open up. The Inyo side.
Great. Thank you, Poncho. Lauren.
Has there been any thought about day use access for wilderness?
We have that discussion almost every day. And yes, we do. And that's one of the reasons for the incremental opening, is to try to give particularly the local people around here an opportunity to get out to the places that they love. But again, I try to prevent, I don't want them going over the top of the mountain. So we are going to try to open some of this up. I may want to go ahead and open it up, but I've got bosses too, and I have to negotiate with them because they're dealing with all of California, the entirety of the over 2 million acres of national forest land that is burned, not just the Inyo and not just the creek fire. They're dealing with all the large fires that are out there. So sometimes sometimes we shotgun things rather than dicing them up very, very finely. And I'm trying to get them to dice it up finally so that we can manage the areas here for the people that live here and for the visitors that come here. But it's a negotiation like everything. Thank you.
Hey, I saw a question on that I'm kind of dying to address. There was a question about the blowdown out in the Devil's Post Pile area and west of the Devil's Post Pile. And last 2 years ago, we had the Lions fire out there up on the Lions Point and up on the escarpment above Devil's Post Pile. That largely was, allowed to burn, and we managed that fire. One of the number one reasons we decided to have that fire was to address that blowdown issue that was up there. And from the Lions Point and the forest boundary between the Sierra and the Inyo to the edge of the rim that drops down in the Devil's Post Pile, that fire burned a lot of that blowdown that was left out there. There is still some that Lions fire didn't address. But if you get the opportunity to hike out to Lions Point and out to, I can't think of the name of the meadow out there right now, Granite Staircase in that area, you'll really see a big difference in a lot of the, lack of better terms, the meat of that whole blowdown was burned up 2 years ago in the Lions fire.
There you go, Jeff. You got your question answered. We have one more, Lauren, and then we'll wrap it up for the evening. Thank you.
Is there anything else we can do as citizens besides putting out very shallow dishpans of water for wilderness animals to drink?
Oh,
I'll
Sheriff
bite
Braun.
on that one.
Thank you.
Sure. So you'll notice my friends Calvin and Hobb showed up at the request of one of the panelists, asked if they could please be here. So they are here. But what you can do is what you're all doing. Have defensible space around your property. Be prepared to evacuate. Pay attention to what's going on around you, and just have the situational awareness of what's going on in your world. Pay attention to the smoke, to the fire, to what's going on. Pay attention to your neighbors, especially if you have neighbors that are older or vulnerable who might need assistance. That's what we need you to do, is to be a good citizen, to help out your neighbors, to help yourselves, make sure that your house is set up, and then make sure that your neighbors are cared for. That's what we need everybody to do. Frank can echo me on that if I missed anything.
No, as always, you hit all those spots. If I had one thing to add here, it's a huge thanks to our federal partners. These people are tired of hearing from me on just about a daily or every other day basis. They're plugged into our situation here. They showed up on short notice today because we had a lot of inquiries last night and this morning. I sure appreciate it. Very much support the tactics and strategy that are being used out there. It's a tough balance between getting the outcomes we want on the fire and not putting young men and women at undue risk out there. They can make some good decisions. And if I were on a community on the other side of the fire that had lost hundreds of houses, they've spent the right amount of time and effort in the right places on the incident. And as things have warmed up a little bit here, had some concern, some things have pivoted over here. And appreciate the balance and the understanding for Mammoth situation. So thank you.
Any other closing comments from any of the presenters? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. Seeing none, certainly want to thank all the presenters for their time this evening. Also want to thank the community for taking the time to join us this evening. We hope you found the presentation informative and you found it helpful during this very difficult and stressful time. Again, just want to remind everybody that every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, the Sierra National Forest does host a 7 p.m. Facebook Live operational briefing. So tune in to that Facebook page. And again, updates are provided on the authoritative sources that we mentioned early in the presentation. So with that, thanks again for joining us and have a good evening.